stream. How we doing today? Weekend ranked Fortnite now. Minecraft. Forever we realm. Hold on, guys. Just gotta update the Twitch settings. Alright. How we doing today, everybody? Hope all is well. Test those over here. Alright, let's go to sleep. How we doing today, chat? Don't think we really need these in here. Cool. There we go. Let's pull up. Pull up some YouTube. YouTube.
USA Safe Pilot rewards safe drivers with up to 30% off your auto insurance premium.
This is my family's rundown old garage, and I'm going to turn it into my dream workshop. He's going to supervise. I pretty much grew up in this garage. When I was 6 years old, my dad got me into go-karting. This is where we would build the karts and handle the race setups every week. And then as I got older, we started working on even bigger projects together, like my 74 Triumph that I still have. Unfortunately, for the last decade or so, it's sat almost entirely unused, except for serving as some storage and, unfortunately, a home for a bunch of mice and squirrels and other critters, making it pretty much useless as a workshop and, quite frankly, unsanitary. We're going to fix that. Now, obviously, this is going to be a pretty big job. So, to keep me on track and to help you follow along, I put together this nifty little list. Some of the stuff I've actually already done, but put it on here anyway because checking it off will give me happy brain time.
To close it off.
So as you guess, after sitting for 10 plus years stuck in dust and having mice and squirrels and chipmunks and who knows what else living here, the first steps were to clean up.
How does Florida sound now?
Because they got a bunch of nasty disease that I don't want to catch, and I sure don't want my supervisor catching. And for that, I handed off to Pastor with the beard. Now, I'm no expert, but I think it's pretty obvious that this is where critters have been digging under the wall and getting into the garage. So in order to assess the damage, I had to clear all this stuff out of the way. I think I ended up filling like 2.5 wheelbarrows full of dirt and rocks just to clear off this one wall. And then I got out the leaf blower to take care of the rest. Of course, through this whole process, I was wearing a respirator because as cute as they are, these animals carry a lot of disease and I don't want any of that. I then moved on to this back wall and cleared out a bunch of this garbage. Some of it I'll be repurposing, some of it I'm just taking to the dump. These bikes are actually going to show up in a future video, so keep an eye out for those. On the other side of the shop, I've got two 1969 Fiberfab Jamaican kit cars. The orange one in the background is by far the nicer of the two shells, and it was actually a gift from my old trumpet teacher, so shout out to Bill for that. This gray one is a parts car that my dad and I picked up to help us work on the infantry, because the shell is in really rough shape, but it had chassis and some other things that we needed. Unfortunately, the project took a backseat when we got that 74 Triumph that I mentioned earlier, but I've got big plans to turn this into a street legal track car, which of course I'll be documenting on the channel. The Jamaican was designed to look like the Lamborghini Miura of the time, but in my opinion they kind of missed the mark. However, it did end up looking a lot like the Ferrari Daytona, so something, shoot for the stars and you'll land on the moon, I guess. While cleaning out the garage, I found this old safe that belonged to my dad. I had no clue what might be in it, I did know the combination, and the batteries were dead empty. So I took an angle grinder to the hinges, and then a crowbar to the door once the hinges were out, trying to pry that open. Nothing was working. It turns out, safes are actually kind of hard to break into. I don't know if any of y'all were aware of this, it's news to me, but just a heads up if you're going to try and break into one in the near future. Eventually I ended up cutting off the entire side of the door where the hinges lived, and even that didn't work. So eventually I thought, what if I just hit the knob really hard with a hammer? And wouldn't you know it? But all that hard work paid off. Because believe it or not, hiding inside this tiny little safe was the next scene. Thank goodness. I've been looking everywhere for that. So that's going to be it. Crossed off on those. Now, of course, that wouldn't do me much good if the rodents just got right back in. So next up on the list was to do rodent exclusion. Alright, so essentially, all we're going to do is we're going to take the bad wood, get it out of here. We're going to take this better wood that's treated so it can get a little bit wet if, moisture gets in. I'm going to put some galvanized steel mesh on the bottom of that. I'm going to notch it around these 4x4s, put it back into place, and hopefully that'll be a lot better. And then I'm going to do some exclusion on the outside as well. And we should be rocking and rolling. I mean, that's just destroyed. Honestly, I was debating if I was going to replace the stuff that they hadn't actually chewed through, but I'm glad I am, because this is all really rotted on the bottom and gross. Not even nailed in. Alrighty, all the old wood is out. So we've got to clean this stuff up, get it out of here, backfill that with some dirt, put the new stuff in. Alright, I got that all cleaned up off camera. It turns out the gap that I need to fill is 5 1/4 inches. These 2x6s measure 5 3/4 inches across. So I'm gonna rip that extra 1/2 inch off, and then I'm gonna go and scribe them against where I need to notch them out, and then we will get them into place. And now I'm gonna notch it out around the post, and then we're gonna put the steel mesh on the bottom of it, slide it in place. Also, I know that people are going to say this is overkill. I could just do exclusion on the outside of the building and it'd be fine. You're probably right. But I always live by the old Mythbusters rule. If it's worth doing, it's worth overdoing. So we're overdoing it.
This is life go.
Overall,
Oh,
I think that looks pretty
baby.
darn good. Here's the before.
Don't worry, I'll get you a nice
Here's the
funeral.
after. So, I'm going to secure this in place, and now that y'all know what the process looks like, I'm just going to rip it around the rest of the perimeter of the garage. Alright, so this wall is finished. And this back wall is a different construction, so I just covered this panel with that steel mesh. And there's a change of plans on this side. It might not look like it, but this wood was actually still pretty solid, and I was worried I was going to damage these 4x4s if I took a crowbar to them. I would rather have the mesh underneath them, but given how solid they were, I decided to fill all the gaps like you can see there with steel wool, and then I went ahead and covered over the top with the steel mesh. It's not perfect, but this isn't the side that the critters have found a way in anyhow, and this is probably overkill because I'm going to do exclusion on the outside of the building as well, so this is just an extra precaution. Alright, this might suck a little, because the ground's probably going to be pretty hard, because you can see there's still snow on it, but it needs done. I've done a bunch of work on the inside. It'd be a shame if critters were still getting in from out here and tearing up the work I did in there, so let's get to it. Actually wasn't too bad. It's actually pretty soft, and even if snow has melted, that the ground's wet. So it's all probably gonna be heavier, but at least it's soft. So that's nice. Now this was really hard work, but it was going well until yep, that's me leaning against the wall in despair. Well, this is no bueno. Let me show you. So I only dug about 8 inches down. And I sliced straight through this UF cable here. According to my research and electrical code, this is supposed to be 24 inches deep. It was only about a third of that. Calling 811, wouldn't have alerted me to this because that's for public lines and this is a private line that was running from the house out to the garage.
Get her ears.
So I consulted my friend who's an electrician, and I'm gonna get this fixed so that I can at least operate my lights in my garage and outlets for now. But of course, long term,
You won't get the
digging
eardrops.
this whole thing up and replacing it with conduit buried at the proper depth would be the proper solution. So I already started digging around it, as you can see, so that I could get access to more of the wire and get it fixed. But yeah, it's frustrating, it's a bummer, but can't change it now. All I can do is fix it and learn from my mistakes. And should have been buried deeper, but I should have been paying more attention. So I'm gonna learn from it. Hopefully some of y'all will learn from my mistakes too. In order to fix this, I picked up a splice kit that's specifically designed to be used underground. The way that it works is you peel back the outer layer of this UF cable, and then you take the interior cables and insert the ends into this connector. You then cinch down on the ends of those cables with these flathead screws, and you pull this heat shrink over. Heat shrink has an adhesive that when you melt it, there's a weather-tight seal around the connector.
All right, come here, little lady.
Alright, well, my phone died.
Hey!
I didn't realize while I was filming this, but as you can see, fix this all up with a fake kit. Added these extra pieces of things you see here because I just noticed a couple unrelated nicks to the insulation that hadn't gone all the way through, but I figured, add some extra protection for good measure. So I consulted with two of my friends who are electricians on this, and they both said that they think it'll hold. And like I said, long term, I want to dig this up and actually probably replace it with 240 power so I can do TIG welding in the garage. So for now, this will get us through. And as you can see, mounted back on. So we're in business. Finished digging out this trench down to a foot deep all the way over there because I know there's another wire somewhere in that area and I didn't want it. So finish this up and I'm gonna go grab the steel mesh so we can get that done.
He has spoken.
I was sitting.
And now he is.
This is not fair.
He has spoken.
You want this mesh to go down a foot and out a foot. So that if they come down out here, we'll run into it. Go like this, we'll run into it. Just like what we did.
You got a sheep in
Like I said, this piece is
Quite a few sheep in here.
quite as deep as
And that's okay.
the others.
That's called diversity, baby.
That
Read up on it.
because there is one other cable that for some reason
Read up on it, baby. Read up on it. Read up on it.
You are a white man. What do you know about a diversity?
somewhere, probably here, but
You're
just
from a
in case
bunch
it's
of
here.
Mediterranean ethnicities. What the fuck do you know about diversity?
But I mean, we still got
Como se llamas?
here because the dirt's gonna come up to about here, so we still got.
Como se llamas? Como se llamas?
Down.
Como se llamas?
You wanna know what
¿Cómo
I
se-
said? You wanna know?
¿Cómo se llamas?
You wanna
¿Cómo
know?
se llamas? ¿Qué hora es? ¿Qué hora es?
10 o'clock.
After I got all that installed, I went ahead and backfilled the dirt. It took me into the night, and I watched the sunset in our grateful rodent exclusionary garage.
No more lo si dice. No more dice.
Now going hand in hand with rodent exclusion is of course the big gas, because all that work I just did isn't going to do me any good if they can just get in underneath the big garage door or the man door. I actually already fixed the gap under the man door, but I didn't really took a piece of 36-inch weather stripping and I bought it from Menards. But the gap in the garage door is a much bigger bear. I got this wood here to stop it from being such a big gap in the meantime, but as you can see, if I kick this out of the way, wait for it. Wait for it. Wait for it. Keep waiting. That's all the way down. So, that's not good. Now this door is brand new. It's installed correctly and it's level. The floor, however, is not. This garage is like 30 years old, and over time it's settled, leading to the slope that has caused the gap on one side and not on the other. Now, I don't really have the money to raise up the floor properly with mud jacking or new concrete, but the garage door company has said that there is an adjustable trim piece that they can install for the weather stripping to go on that can be adjusted down on one side and level up on the other. So that's going to solve that problem. I'm going to do that later this week, but I'm not going to check it off yet because while I'm not above writing things on a checklist I've already done, I am above checking them off before then. So since I've only really done half of the door gap, I'm just gonna do half next to that one, and I'll do the other half on the big one. And that brings us to where we're at today. So, I'm gonna go staple this thing on the back wall, and we're gonna get to the rest of it. Next up on the list was insulation. So I went and picked that up, and I made sure that it was very safely secured. It ain't going nowhere. Now let's pretty obvious, but I've never done this before. This is my first time installing insulation, and I made it harder on myself because the 48 off center pole barn insulation was a lot more expensive, so I got the 16 off center and made do with that. That meant that there was no great way to secure the middle piece of insulation, but I did that with tape, and this also helped the vapor barrier to stay a bit more consistent. Again, I'm obviously no professional, but I do think this move was pretty slick. Yep, I know what you're thinking. Jesus Christ, that's Jason Bourne. To go around this window, I had to get some pieces cut to length and get them secured in a similar fashion. And then I did go back later with some expanding foam around some of those cracks around that window.
Didn't think so.
It was at this point that I realized I put my sign in a really stupid spot, but once I got in the hang of it, I was cruising pretty good. This is actually in real time, if you can believe it. The sidewalls were actually a lot easier. Despite the fact that these horizontal pieces of framing meant I had to do more cutting of the insulation, they also meant that I had a good place to secure the middle pieces of insulation, leading to a much cleaner result. Again, it's not perfect, but it'll get the job done. After that, I went around the lower perimeter and did something I should have done before, which is add a 2x4 for framing to secure the bottom of the insulation to keep it from getting wet if moisture does get on the floor.
I think I want to combine these
and
two
to give me a
houses.
place to secure the walls to when I get to the next step of installing these. And with that, we got insulation around the whole shop. You know, I made some mistakes along the way, but in the end, figured it out, and pretty happy.
These in line? These are in line. Ooh, that's kind of perfect. For the walls, I decided to go with half-inch OSB panels. I did this for a few reasons, not the least of which being that I just didn't want to mud and tape the seams on drywall because then you would all see what a hack I really am. But also because I think OSB is a perfectly adequate material for garage walls, and it's a lot easier to screw into and attach things to, which I think is really important in any shop environment. Of course, I put on some safety gear, and here you can see me cutting around an outlet. Nope, not what I wanted to do.
I had neglected to realize or measure that in this corner, the framing actually wasn't a perfect 48 off center, so I had to cut down the panel a little bit, but we got there in the end.
Yeah, that's gonna work out nicely.
From here, things were pretty smooth sailing. I was leaving about 1/8 of an inch gap in between each panel to allow for expansion and contraction seasonally, and then when I got to things like windows, I just measured meticulously and transferred those measurements over to the board. Like I said, it was all smooth sailing. Once I had those measurements transferred over, I then used my straight edge to draw the outline of the window.
Yeah, I
Flipped
think
it over so
we're
that I
knock
could do
this
these cuts
down.
without hitting the insulation, and then I just hit all the sides with plunge cuts. I handled the corners with this jigsaw, and on the final one, I used my patented toe holding up method until that piece was ready to fall out. Then I gave myself a nice vote of confidence. After being a bit of a clueless idiot, this is not too bad. And then I mumbled something and convinced myself you all could relate.
It's tough 'cause it's not square, so I have to hold it more or less square while I trim that one in.
You know.
It ain't perfect, but it ain't bad.
Good enough for who it's for. Just like with the insulation, once I got the hang of this, I was really cruising through it. Again, this is normal speed, if you can believe it. After getting all the walls finished, I went straight into prepping for paint. I decided to go with this really classic two-tone design that I think will match with any customizations I do to the garage later on. In order to do that two-tone really well, I used a laser level,
and went through and taped off a straight line all the way across so that I could separate the two colors. For the white, I went with Pittsburgh Paint's Willow Springs, mostly because it was a nice shade, but also because I liked that it had the same name as an iconic racetrack. As you imagine, the OSB was really soaking up the paint, so while I was really hoping I could get away with just doing one coat on this, I knew it probably wasn't realistic, and that turned out to be true. So I went through, did my first coat, and then after that it dried, I went through and added a second. But of course, the only thing more boring than watching paint dry is watching a fool with a roller pretend to be a painter. So we're just gonna zoom right through that second coat, and then get a nice, satisfying tape feel. As you saw, there were a couple spots where chips came up with tape, so I had to go back and touch those up. After that, I went back with a cheap piece of trim and a brad nailer, got that all installed, and then I went over that with the same Willow Springs color just so that everything would match, since the whites were slightly different from one another. I realized while painting that the tape line I had done for the white paint actually wasn't that crucial, so long as the white went down to where the black would cover it up. However, this tape line did need to be perfect, so I got it perfectly level, and then I painted over the edges to prevent bleed through. I was hoping I could also get away with one coat on the black, but as with the white, that wasn't the case. So for the first coat, I just went up to right beneath where that tape line was, because the white I had painted over the edge wasn't quite dry yet. So to avoid those mixing together into a sort of grayish color, I just went to right beneath it. In between coats, I painted the door white to get that looking nice and fresh, and then on my second coat, I went all the way up to the tape line. And that gives us this pretty satisfying feel. Ignore that. And that. Okay, so maybe I still had a little bit of bleed through, but it's the thought that counts. All the trim was fairly straightforward. There were a few spots where, because the floor is in pretty poor shape, I did have to notch around different cracks and whatnot, like you can see here. It's not the perfect solution, but when this was your before, and this is your after, I think it's pretty hard to argue that it is definitely better. And with that, the whole garage is painted, and it is a night and day difference from what it used to be.
I kind of think I want to integrate this into the house.
While I was doing all that, the garage door company also came out and fixed the gap underneath the door by adding that adjustable piece of trim that I mentioned earlier. So now that's taken care of as well. And that brings us to the workbench. For this, I just made a really simple structure out of some 2x6s and 2x4s that I had laying around from previous parts of this project, and I designed it to be the exact height of the black two-tone. However, over on the far right side, I did have to shim it so that it would be even and level, because, like I said, the floor is not in the best shape. But in the end, it turned out pretty great.
How do I want to do this?
Now that I had at least a few surfaces to put things on in the garage, I didn't do full organization, but I at least got everything out of the center of the floor so that I could move around and clean the floor up and get things sorted a little bit more logically to prepare for doing a full shop organization the next day. So the next morning, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, I came back outside and set about it. I improved that workbench by adding a shelf vent on the second level, and then I set about properly organizing it. I started off by adding this pegboard. I know not everyone loves pegboards, but I love them. I painted it the same white as the walls, and then I thought I would do some entertaining time lapses of actually organizing that pegboard, but I realized part of the way through this process that it was going to take me hours just to sort through all the old sockets that my dad and my great uncle had in his shop. So I did that off camera, and as you can see, it was coming along pretty nicely, but there was still a long way to go in terms of making it functional. I added some wall storage for things like extension cords, the chains for my engine hoist, these far too fancy funnel holders, but they were there and they're pretty cool, so I put them there. And And then I added some cleaning supplies up on
I
the
think
wall.
we actually do.
And things were coming along pretty nicely, if I do say so myself. Oh, apparently I do say so.
What do you think, buddy? How's it look?
But luckily the supervisor agreed. From here it was really just a matter of finishing touches. I put up some of these old decorations, and then part of my license plate collection. And then it was time to trim out the windows. For that, I just used leftover OSB because it's plenty good enough for trimming out windows in a shop. And I painted it in the same Black Magic color from Pittsburgh that I'd used for the lower
How do I
section
wanna
of
do
the
this?
walls. As you can see, my supervisor is working real hard in the background.
I think we keep it the original size on the outside.
And once installed, the window trim made a great shelf for some more decorations. Around this time, my buddy Eric showed up in his 95 Miata, which is sick, to help me install some shelves. We lined everything up at the laser level and used some great teamwork. We also had some really philosophical conversations.
You say if I was yoked, I could do pull-ups? Yeah. If I were strong, I could probably do that as well. Exactly.
There was just one
Yeah,
final
I think I
crucial
like it
addition to
like
be made,
this.
and then I got to go over and check the final things off my checklist. Without further ado, I present to you my not so new, but very much so improved workshop.
Damn.
So I think we're just about done, at least for now. Obviously, I still need to finish up and insulate the ceiling. I need to fix and find a place for my sandblasters. I need to get a real trash can. There's always going to be things that need doing, as is the case with any shop, I think. But I'm really, really happy with how far this place has come. It's not the biggest shop in the world, and one day I would love to have something a little bigger. But within my current means and to meet my current needs, this is more than enough. It's going to be an amazing place to hang out with my buddies, to hang out with my dog, and to work on some really rad projects, like this one sitting here or the one sitting out in the driveway. So, if you'd like to follow along with those projects, please consider liking and subscribing. It would mean the world to me, and I'm hoping to turn this channel into a really positive and inspiring place for the car community, and I'd love to have you along for the ride. Thanks so much for watching.
I think we can do something like this, maybe.
Sometimes things just click. And sometimes they don't.
2 months ago, I transformed this garage from a mouse and squirrel-infested mess that had been sitting completely unused for over a decade into what you see now. A functional, clean, and dare I say, decent-looking workshop. It's already been an amazing place to work on projects and to hang out with my buddies, but it's got some problems. First of all, there's this very annoying gap between the concrete slabs that makes it extremely hard to roll around under cars or to roll cars around on my Gojeks. So that certainly needs fixed. There's also way too much wasted storage space on the walls. The door doesn't have any trim. The bench tops are still just ugly old OSB. I have 2 media blasters, and they're both broken. My mini fridge is a little too mini. And perhaps worst of all, there's nowhere good to sit and scroll Facebook Marketplace. But in the next few days, we're gonna fix all that.
I think maybe we come up one more.
You might be wondering why I'm pulling the FJ Cruiser into the shop when the list of tasks that I just created has absolutely nothing to do with the FJ Cruiser. Well, I'm pulling the rear bench out and turning that into a bench seat for the workshop. I'm gonna be building a camper back here, so it had to come out regardless, and the FJ was never a great passenger vehicle. Plus, in a week, I'm picking up a vehicle that is gonna be the ultimate homie hauler, so the FJ really doesn't need to be equipped for passengers. After taking some measurements, I drew up a sketch that is absolutely going to change, and then I ran to good old Menards to pick up some supplies. If it wasn't already obvious from the 2x4s and the OSB and my supplies, this isn't going to be fine furniture. It's just going to be functional and fit in a shop. Also, I'm not a fine furniture maker, if that's not obvious. Okay, so as I'm sure I mentioned in the voiceover, the OSB goes on the bottom because it's the bottom of the storage compartment, and the top needs to be mostly open. So now I'm just going to lay these out, grab a bench, see where these need to sit to support it, and then I'll get them cut size, get them installed, and then we're making pretty good progress. Listen, sometimes filming me and voiceover me don't have the same vision. I want to make self-deprecating jokes, he wants to get work done. That's just how it goes, it's sort of our thing, and it's fine. But at any rate, I figured out exactly where the supports for the bench needed to be, and then I went about building the rest of the structure. I got everything laid out, and then I leaned the backrest up against the stool at a comfortable seating position, figured out that angle, and then attached a backrest support on either side of the structure. After that, I used the 2x2 to keep those backrests from sliding backwards, and things were looking pretty good. Good boy. Hi. Alright, I think this is pretty darn good. I'm going to put it on casters so that I can move it around the shop. And I also think it would be pretty cool to build some cup holders. So I'm going to see if I have anything around here that I can use to fasten those. But I'm just going to throw it in time lapse, get those things done, and I'll check in with you after. I kept the cup holders super simple. I just used a 2x4, measured the width of one of my favorite bottles of soda, and then I cut that out with a jigsaw, put a piece of OSB on the bottom, and added a support so that I could attach it to the whole structure. Alright, I think this turned out pretty darn good. I built these nifty little cup holders here.
I need more cobblestone for show.
But overall, I'm pretty happy with it. And I think Goose is too. So, we're going to call it a night, and tomorrow morning, we're going to get to the rest of the list.
Get a little bit there. I don't think I.
Once I was in the shop, with the exception of this water bottle flipping session, apparently, I was all business. I got to work clearing out sections in front of the walls where I wanted to add storage, figuring out what exactly I could get off the floor, up onto the walls, and out of the way. Also, a quick pro tip: if you're ever hanging shelves by yourself and you aren't particularly precious about the wall that you're putting them on, throw a screw right underneath where that shelf is going to sit, and that'll help hold it in place until you grab the actual supporting screws in to the supports. I've been tucking my sawhorses away behind this router table here, and it's nice having them out of the way, but they're not very accessible, and not that I care a ton, but they do scratch up the wall pretty much every time I put them back there. So I just took these two hooks, made a much better spot on the wall for them, and then I did the same thing with these two metal ones that were under the router table.
Cool. I think I like that. Let's go change that up. Now it's like tic-tac-toe.
As a general rule, I like to keep all of my larger tools that I frequently use outside by the big garage door, a rule which I was breaking by having the table set over here. Luckily, I had made enough room for it, so I got moved over to a much more logical place right next to the router table. I also decided to put my pressure washer up on the wall because it's not that heavy and it's just one more thing to get off the floor.
Not what I wanted to do.
My
Bruh.
calculations are correct.
I think it was just my cats. Oops.
Oh yeah.
Why am I? Oh.
Just like we drew it up, huh, buddy? Huh? What do you think? With With this side of the shop and that wall looking pretty good, I turned my attention to the other side. I built this little shelf just to display some of my model cars, but I decided to take that down and split it up into two more shallow shelves. I then took
Okay,
it over
so
a little
I
bit higher,
think
and Hannah is going to be making me a sign from the shop, and I think right underneath these two shelves would be a nice spot for it. After that, I made yet another trip to good old Menards to get this hardboard for the top of my workbenches and some supplies to make another working surface to put my sandblaster on.
I'm not sure how I want to do this.
Okay, I think I've built all of the new workbenches and seating benches and shelves that I'm going to be building for the time being. And while I'm definitely more about function over form with these, I do want them to look nice, so I'm going to take this opportunity to paint not just the new stuff, also my old workbenches in the same black that the lower half of my walls is in, so that everything just looks very cohesive.
I think we got a pillar here. We
This is
chop
something that
this
quite a
down.
few wish that I would have done when I did the original garage transformation video.
Oh, shit.
And quite frankly, you were right. I really should have taken the time to paint the workbenches that I had made back then in this color, because it does make such a difference in tying the entire shop together. For the bulk of the structure, I just did one coat, but for all the front-facing surfaces, I did two. And then out of sheer curiosity, I sprayed those two small shells with a turbo can just to see how close the color would be. It actually turned out looking pretty darn good. While the paint was drying, I also set up this little storage system for my jack stands, because we all know how annoying it is to have these things laying all over your shop, bumping into them and tripping over them all the time. This is nothing fancy, just some 79-cent hooks that I made sure to put into the studs behind my OSB so they can support the weight of these decently beefy jack stands. As you can see, pretty darn secure.
Hold on. Can we do
Later on, when the paint was pretty much dry, I went ahead and cut this
This?
hardboard into two 24
Yeah, we can. There we go.
I got those installed.
Then that way I think we can do something like so. And we just gotta figure out how this is gonna connect.
I gotta say, it was great to walk in my shop this morning and see everything freshly painted and matching. We're definitely taking steps in the right direction. Next thing on the list is this sandblaster. The reason I'm going to focus on this one, at least for now, and some of the red one that I've got under my workbench, is that this one has all the internals. It's got the actual media blaster, it's got the light, and those both work, whereas the other one is just the shell. So obviously there are still some other parts that need to be placed on this, so I'm going to do a little bit of disassembly, make sure I know exactly what I need to get, and then I'm going to run the good old Menards, pick up some parts, and then we'll go from there.
So we want it to be this wide.
After disassembly, it looked like I was going to need to replace the gloves, a few seals, this acrylic, and the picker hose. So, as always, I went to good old Menards, picked up what I could, and then I did have to go to Harbor Freight for the gloves. For the new acrylic, I decided to not go with the typical rubber seal around the edge. Instead, I'm just going to cut it out so it's big enough to sit on the face of the sandblaster itself, and then we'll use adhesive to secure it. Apparently, I had the wrong settings on my jigsaw for this first attempt at cutting this curve, and it did not go well. But that obviously wasn't the end of the world. I just transferred the design over onto the other side, and this time I used a scoring method for the long straight edge, but I still used my jigsaw on the curves and the shorter edge. I was just much more careful this time, and I adjusted the settings. It was all going great until the very end, and that little bit was off. But it actually worked out because that notch fit right around the edge of this latch. So I leaned into it, cut one on the other side, and then I had the acrylic fitting pretty darn good. Trust me, I am well aware that this is not the cleanest adhesive job, but I did get full coverage all the way around, and it did work. While that was setting, I went ahead and got the glove replaced on these brackets that were removable from the face of the sandblaster, but then when I put them back on, I realized something.
Well, this wasn't very smart.
those things that like you know intuitively, but then you just don't think about it and you do it wrong. And it's not a big deal. But it's definitely gonna be more annoying to get that glove on inside the box. So whatever. Do it now. Instead of trying to tediously clamp the end of the glove all the way around the little lip on the inside of this bracket, I actually decided to stretch the leather all the way around the outside of it and then install it like that. My line of thinking here was that not only is it a little bit easier, but it'll also help with the seal so that media doesn't get out around the gloves. I then replaced this foam tape and we were golden. Alright, I'll wait until the adhesive is fully clear on this before I go ahead and test it, but it certainly looks a heck of a lot better. That's going to take until tomorrow. For now, we're going to go ahead and put trim on the door. For the door trim, I'm doing exactly what I did for the window trim, which is
We
use
kick this
leftover
over
trim
one?
from when I put up the walls in the shop. It's free, and personally, I think it looks perfectly nice in a shop environment. I did a little bit of measuring, a little bit of test fitting to make sure that the door would still close, and I got it ready to come out. After that, I went ahead and painted it the exact same black as everything else in the shop. While that was drying, I tried to figure out what was wrong with this 21-gallon air compressor that used to belong to my dad. It turns out that the switch housing was broken, so for the entire 10 plus years that the shop was sitting unused, the switch was stuck in the on position. But it wasn't plugged in, so I can't imagine that it would have like fried anything. All of the contact points are clean, all of the wires are intact, but even when I hold the housing in place so that it's performing as it should, and I pull the switch up, which is the on position, nothing's happening. So if anybody has any ideas, please feel free to let me know in the comments. I also went ahead and addressed my mini fridge situation by digging up this old one that had been in the basement for probably 8 plus years since I had been in college.
It's almost like I planned it.
Okay, I swear that I do know how to wink. I'm not sure if I got stage fright there or something, but certainly not my best work. Regardless though, the trim was dry at this point, so I went ahead and got that installed. And after a pretty darn productive day, we called it a night. Alrighty. So far, we built some new, much more comfortable seating. We built some new shelves, some new wall storage, as well as a new worktop to put the sandblaster on. We fixed the sandblaster. We added a much less miniature mini fridge. We painted everything so that it all matches and looks really nice. We put cardboard on top of the workbenches so those look nicer and are a bit more functional. We put trim on the door, and we organized a little bit, putting a couple things in more logical places. So if I'm not mistaken, the only thing left on my list is the floor. Now the main issue with the floor is over time this expansion gap running right down the middle of the garage has widened and cracked and pieces have chipped out just as the slabs have settled. This has led to wheels of my creeper and my go jacks getting caught in it, and it's definitely a functionality issue. There are other expansion gaps and one small crack in one of the slabs as well, and I am planning on addressing
I think we're gonna leave off there tonight. I gotta figure out how I'm gonna connect
the
these.
biggest gap is the one that's actually affecting my ability to use the shop. So I picked up everything I'm gonna need to fix that. I'm gonna walk you through what I do. Let's get to it. Now I'm gonna be up front and just say right now that this did not turn out how I hoped. So I certainly wouldn't consider this a tutorial, and I'm definitely not a professional. But I did a few things right, and the things that I did wrong, hopefully we can all learn from together. The first step is pretty obvious. Anytime that you need adhesion between a liquid and some sort of surface, you want that surface to be clean. So I went through the shop vac and took care of that. Next, I went through some different sizes of
Yeah.
rod and filled all of the gaps with
We'll figure this out another
so that
day.
the sealant didn't have to occupy as large of a
So until next time, chat, be sure to subscribe and follow.